I'm super excited about the release of the schedule today, guys. Uh, it's really daunting. The beginning and the middle are super difficult, but it's what we like to do. We put ourselves in a good position. I like where we are with our projected quad ones and quad twos. It'll be the most challenging schedule we've had here in our 3 years, and so it should be a platform for us to go see what we're made of and try and keep getting better every day.
All right, questions for Coach. Mitch, start us off.
Yeah, Coach. What was or how many? Were there some games maybe that broke off from the schedule that you thought you had that ended up not appearing on the schedule, and that's what maybe caused a little bit of a delay in piecing this all together?
It's always that way. Everybody is trying to work a bunch of different angles, trying to put together a schedule. So there were several times where we thought we had something done, and it turned out to not be done. And then there's also a waiting game, right? You think you have a great game that's going to come to you maybe if if the opponent you're hoping for, if their game falls through, and so you kind of hang in there as long as you can, and at some point you got to move on. So it's a lot of different pieces trying to put in place.
What do you and your staff ask Coach Robinson this, but maybe just if you could add more insight into it, but like what do you guys do in terms of researching and try to forecast these teams to project them as potential quad ones and quad twos?
Yeah, so a good starting place is Ken Palm puts out his projections, and he's been wrong about us the last 2 years, or 2 previous years. We've outperformed his expectations, but at least it gives you a general sense of where you're going. And then this year was particularly interesting because you got to look at teams and see their super senior situation, how many guys they were bringing back, and looking at roster is super important for us. And so you kind of just put the pieces together and make your best guesses, right? And so it's you're always hoping it works out well. You never know for sure. So much of it depends on the good fortunes of other teams if they play as well as they're expected to and stay healthy. But right now we're projected to have 10 quad one games, and that'll be the most we've been able to play so far. And so we worked really, really hard at that. For example, we're going to play at Missouri State. Playing at their place makes it a quad one. Normally, that's probably not a game that you're going to go chase, but we're trying to find any way we can to get the quad one game so that we can, put together a really, really positive resume by the end of the season.
Jake and then Sean.
Yeah, Coach. Obviously, the effects of COVID-19 have affected everything. How did it play into just putting this schedule together? Because obviously this is a little bit delayed.
Yeah, so I think that's had not as much impact as last year. We actually finished our schedule like 3 months earlier than we did last year. We were still working on games in December and January last year, so we're super proud of that. But it hasn't had as much of an impact. It kind of, there's some conversation, as you can imagine. Like if I'm San Diego State right now, for example, I played at the Marriott Center 2 years ago in front of an incredible crowd, went home and played in front of nobody, and then I'm coming back to BYU this year playing in front of an unbelievable crowd. And so from that standpoint, you're like, man, this just isn't working out fair. So some of those conversations come into play with COVID. I'm sure there were some places where contracts were, abandoned due to COVID just because games were lost that you couldn't actually recover. So it put off continuing series and things like that. But for the most part, aside from things like that, it was pretty smooth sailing.
I also wanted to ask you about the PK80 matchup you got with Oregon. That's a pretty prestigious event to be playing in. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's awesome, right? I mean, come on. Anytime you get to be, Nike has been so good to BYU for so long. And so anytime you get to be affiliated with an elite Nike event, it's really exciting. Getting to play, obviously a terrific opponent in Oregon, and getting to do it in Portland in an NBA arena is pretty great.
Sean, go ahead.
Yeah, Coach, building off that a little bit, my eyes definitely were drawn to the start of your guys' schedule. In addition to Oregon, I think 4 of your first 5 are against returning teams from the NCAA tournament, and you're going back to back San Diego State and then Oregon with, jumping on that flight to Portland in between. What is it about this team and maybe the makeup of this team where you guys are so confident putting together such a tough start to this season like that?
Well, I don't. Well, first of all, I do think we have some veteran leaders on this team. I think these guys have a sense of who they are. We got some holes we got to fill in, some things we got to learn, in some places we really have to come together for sure, right? But essentially, our agenda when we're trying to put together a schedule is not complicated. We're just trying to find as many of the best games we can possibly get, and so. Would I love to have a little break between San Diego State and Oregon 100%? Would I love to maybe not start the season with 4 out of 5, first 3 and 4 out of 5 returning NCAA teams? Well, I'm not sure that anybody would say that's really smart. We got this middle part where we're at Utah Valley, at Missouri State, Utah State, and then essentially at Creighton. I mean, come on. I don't know how you're getting a harder 5 games than that, right? So we just kind of start and we're like, okay, let's make this the hardest possible schedule we can. And then when it's done, that is today, then we start full-time prayer and fasting, hoping that we can actually endure it.
Mitch and then Jake.
Yeah, Coach, you have 4 in-state games, well, 5 if you include Westminster with the Division II. You're going to be going to the Big 12 eventually. Will you always have that desire to play such a large volume of in-state games going forward, do you think?
Well, I don't actually have the desire now. In-state games are hard. But they're great. Like, in-state games are really special. They're good for our guys because they're so tough and they're so competitive. I mean, you take any of those 5 games, and it's just going to be a fight to the bitter end, right? It just is. That's what's special about in-state games. So we love to go compete. Clearly, our scheduling ability is going to change when we move to the Big 12, just because we're going to have theoretically, we expect that we're going to have more games on the schedule, just more games scheduled. Right now in the WCC, we only have 16 games in our league schedule. So a lot of major leagues have gone up to 20, so there'll be less games that are free for us to go. And the other thing about the Big 12 is we're probably not going to have to hunt and peck and search and fight so hard to get quad 1 games. There's going to be an awful lot of quad 1 games. Maybe every game is going to be a quad 1 game. And so, we'll probably shift our attention a little bit that way also. But I hope we're always playing in-state games. This game with Utah is special. We should always have it. Utah State has been a great partner. Weber's been a great partner. Utah Valley is right here. It might not be an every year deal like it is right now. This will be the second straight year we've played 5 in-state teams. And it's really good for us. But I imagine that the quantity will decrease. But it's still going to be an important part of what we do.
I kind of had a similar question, Coach, just wondering how you, moving over to the Big 12, what is your philosophy, you think, going to be with regards, okay, how do we go about setting up this schedule while also balancing the fact that you might be playing in one of the premier basketball conferences?
Yeah, I mean, we're not shy to say it. It's the number 1 conference in the country. I mean, find me a metric that says anything different, right? And so clearly it's going to change. Right now, like I said, we're super simple. We're trying to find every single quad 1 game we can get because we don't have the luxury of being able to position them in the right place or give ourselves a cushion game between each quad 1. We just don't have the luxury of doing that. It's so hard. Guys, it is super challenging to schedule right now for us. And so right now we're just taking any tough game under any circumstances that we can possibly get. That's going to be a big change. With the Big 12, we're going to already have, a whole host of, I don't know what it's going to be, 12, 14 quad 1 games built into our into our regular season schedule. And so we'll be able to kind of be a little bit more meticulous about how we choose things and make more sense of it. I think. We'll see.
I just wanted to kind of build off that a little bit. In terms of your team building, moving towards that, obviously you have a couple of years now before you ultimately make that transition into the Big 12. Are you going to go about building your roster any differently, maybe going in versus what you've done previously here in Provo?
Yeah, I like the direction we're going. We're trying to recruit the best players we can. We're trying to have a really deep roster. We're trying to have a locker room that's really special. And so I think those kind of that DNA of what we're doing is important. I do think there's a chance we have some access to some different players. I think the portal becomes even more interesting than it's been, and it's been super interesting for us. I think our conversations with high school players is a little bit different. And so it's, listen, you rarely do you go through a recruiting cycle with a player, with a prospect, where there's not some conversation about league. And the best league in the country is actually not the answer for some prospects, right? That's not what they want. We're going to try and find the ones where it is the right answer.
Any last questions? All right, Mitch, let's finish with you.
Hey, Coach, just wanted to, ask you about your personnel a little bit with this, tough non-conference schedule, all these quad one games you guys are going to have. Do you feel like you've got the roster and the depth once again to navigate this schedule and have the success you're looking for to have a path to an at-large NCAA tournament bid?
I think we do. We'll see. I mean, we're all rolling into the season trying to figure things out. But, I look at Alex Barcelo and T. John Lucas, two of the most experienced playmakers in the country. I mean, and that's not an overstatement. That, normally I'm ridiculous, but that's actually true. These guys have proven themselves, and so you feel really good kind of at the head of this deal with playmakers on the floor. They've grown a great relationship where they're playing on the floor together. I feel like the middle of our roster, the size of it with Caleb and Seneca and Gideon and I think there's something really interesting there. I think the 5/4 we're kind of due by committee. Rich Harward is super proven. Gavin Baxter is proven. Just, we'll see if he stays healthy. And then we got two young guys in Foose and Atiki kind of rounding out that 5, maybe a little bit of 4. And then we got some guys that can really shoot the ball. Trevin Nell was the best shooter in the WCC, and Spencer Johnson shot 39% and is an elite level defender. And Hunter Erickson, we expect to get things out of him. And so I feel like this roster, we're capable. And we're gonna have to play a little bit different than we did year 1 and a little bit different than we did year 2. And we're kind of learning that together right now. These guys are gonna have to bond and make this about this team more than it's about themselves, so they can be individually rewarded. But if we do those things, I'm excited about the season, guys. I'm so excited. If for no other reason, then we hopefully we get you all back in the gym, and that's gonna be awesome.
And just a quick housekeeping item. What's the first day of practice? Isn't that coming up in about 2 weeks?
Yeah, so right now, the first day of practice is the 28th, Tuesday the 28th. Guys, is that right? Tuesday the 28th? First day of practice is Tuesday the 28th. So that's the first day we can have official practice, but we might front load that on the 27th. We're actually allowed to use our full 4 hours on the court for that week on the 27th, so we're fine-tuning that. We got one thing we got to work on Friday the 24th, but we might start official practice definitely the 28th. We might have a full-time practice the 27th too, though.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Coach.
You guys are awesome. Thank y'all.